Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about some of these bizarre ideas people get about show-off lifts, and I think usually it shows a lack of real training experience with people, and it shows how easily people can really misunderstand the amount of weight sitting on an exercise, like how much weight's on a machine or a bar, versus actual strength with people who really are strong or even have a strength-based build. Because that's one of the things I've heard people say, that this guy, oh, he's doing rack pulls with 600 pounds. Like, I actually heard the enhanced athlete guy mention that about some teenager who was on a bunch of SARMs, right? He said, well, that's strong, and it's not. It's absolutely not. Rack pulls above the knee with 600 pounds. There are ranked novices in the gym doing that who are running some of these silly programs like Naturally Enhanced, who are tiny, who look like they weigh 140 pounds. Same thing, you'll see people say, well, this guy's doing leg presses with 1,000 pounds for, 10 reps. Well, I'm sorry, that's just not that impressive. And a lot of people would say, what? Well, what do you mean? And I'm not even saying my regular training lifts up here on camera right now are impressive, because they're not. These are just normal training lifts. And this is after me pulling an erector and just finishing rehabbing it, right? So these lifts aren't impressive. They're a strength base, right? They're a strength base. But they're not impressive, and they're way below what I've done in the past. But people don't understand that some exercises are simply easier than others. And I throw these numbers out there, and people get offended and call it lies and BS and everything else. And they're like, well, you're full of it. That's not true. But they are true. What I mean by that is usually the real leg press, like the leg press slides, in my personal experience, you can usually do about 4 times what you can squat on there. Now, I mean 4 times what you could actually squat, not people's half squat gym lifts, right? So a lot of guys out there who can half squat 405, whose max squat is really 225, right? So, if you half squat 405, your leg press might only be 900 pounds for a couple reps. So that's kind of funny, because I do get people who say, I don't know, the leg press, it's like, no, you can about double what you can squat. Well, really? I don't think that you do a whole lot of squatting then. Because if you're a decent squatter, you're going to be able to squat a hell of a lot more than double what you squat. And this is based on my own observation, my own experience, because I did play with the leg press years ago, and it's a show-off lift. And so when I say that 4 times, I do mean that. I'm saying that when I have been able to squat 500 pounds, and then I started training the leg press as an accessory movement, that I could do 2,000 pounds on it. Now, I'll say that, and then people want to argue that must not be true. And what I would say to anyone who wants to argue about that, go to the gym yourself and try it. Don't get caught up in thinking about the weight on the machine. That's the only reason people get psyched out on something like a leg press. It's a show-off lift. Trust me, if you can squat 400 pounds all the way to depth, right? If you can throw 405 on the bar and you can squat it to parallel, and I don't mean a half squat, legitimately parallel, and you get under a leg press fresh, and you actually forget about the weights and focus on doing the lift and spend a couple of weeks just building the movement pattern up, you'll be leg pressing 1,600 pounds, right? You will. You absolutely will. And as far as 1,000-pound leg presses, again, I've seen women do this. But again, people want to argue because they'll say, well, I see this person and they do less than that. Or Ronnie Coleman only did 2,400 pounds for 20 reps. Well, so what? So what? Was Ronnie Coleman a world record holding squatter? No, he was a good squatter. He was a strong squatter. There are plenty of guys out there who squat more than him. How much do you think they could do on a leg press then? So you need to look at it from that perspective and understand that. The leg press is a show-off lift. And so when you see that said, well, this person, they're doing leg presses with 1,000 pounds. Well, that's not impressive. That's the equivalent of about a 250-pound squat. And if that's what you consider to be a strength base for your legs, then I don't know what to tell you. You're hanging around some really, really weak people. The leg press is a show-off lift. It's a lift that where you can get the leverage is just right. You can find the sweet spot on that slide where, again, you can move some absolutely monstrous weights. And that actually makes it kind of a useless exercise, because the amount of work you have to do to load and unload that machine for such little stimulus really makes it a useless thing, other than maybe an accessory movement for some people whatever at the end of a workout. That's neither here nor there. But the point is, it just isn't that strong. And these are lifts that people use to show off and to mask their strength or to display strength that isn't what they really have. And that's what you need to understand with this. Like, so you'll see someone doing that, and there's a lot of people will be really enamored by that because it seems like a big number, and they'll say, oh, they must have really strong legs. Well, they really don't. And what do we know about their back and core, right? So you have that, and then we have like the above the knee rack pulls. Well, I mean, a perfect example. Look at Strap-on Destiny, 1,000-pound above the knee rack pull, sub 600-pound deadlifter. So what do you think the ratios are there? He's what, a 500-pound deadlifter? Maybe low 500s? He couldn't deadlift 585 sumo in straps. So let's not even talk about conventional raw, right? He failed a 585. He couldn't lock it. So he's a sub 600-pound deadlifter at his strongest when he was doing the 1,000-pound leg pulls and actually claiming he was going to get really strong on the deadlift. So approximately double, maybe a hair less than double. So when you see some guy who, again, enhanced athlete says, oh, he's strong, he's doing 600-pound above the knee rack pulls. Well, so what? That's the equivalent of a 315-pound deadlift. I mean, in anyone's world out there, does anyone think a 315 deadlift for a grown man? Well, even a teenage boy, who's 200 plus pounds and putting hormones in their body. I mean, do we count this as a feat of strength? And if it did require strength and muscle because size and strength are correlated, why do we see all these kids who were uploading their footage while they were doing all these above the knee rack pulls? We've seen them all over YouTube who are tiny and don't even look like they lift, and they're doing 500, 550, 600 pounds on the above the knee rack pull. So if they're doing it and they don't have any muscle or strength, is this really impressive? No, of course not. Of course it isn't. Don't get caught up in looking at these hyped up lifts and the enormous amount of weight being moved and assume that that's correlated with strength, because stabilizers are taking out, the distance the weight is moved is changed, and we're dealing with levers. You're having totally different moment arms. That's like saying because you can put a jack under a car that's a 4,000-pound car and lift half of it up with the jack that you're really, really strong, right? Right? That's what you're saying. No, it has to do with levers. It has to do with the moment arms. It has to do with all that stuff. A lot of these lifts, you are getting a multiplier in the amount of leverage you can put because you're not having to put muscles at angles and at positions where it puts more tension on the muscle, where the muscle has to work a hell of a lot harder to move the same amount of weight. It's totally different. It matters. So you could say, well, they're lifting that weight, and that's true. They are lifting that weight. But that also should tell you that that's not that impressive, that there must be something special going on with those moment arms and those angles and other things that is allowing them to lift a tremendous amount of weight that really isn't that impressive, that someone who's actually really strong could probably do more if there wasn't like the risk of injury, because that's the thing you're going to do with these rack pulls. Do you really want to load 1,400 pounds on your spine? Probably not. Doesn't mean that there aren't people capable of doing it. I mean, from a muscular perspective. But again, these are show-off exercises. These are show-off exercises in which people can move tremendous amounts of weight. And keep that in mind, that once you set aside the psychological factor, because that's the only reason some people can't go really heavy on these. Like you'll see someone says, I don't know, man, I put 1,000 pounds on a leg press and it felt really, really heavy. I had to quit and I was throbbing and burning. It's like, no, because you psyched yourself out. When you actually train the lift and you set that aside, you start to realize really quickly getting 3 or 4 times what you can squat on there and actually doing it comes pretty easy once you quit telling yourself that it's heavy and you just go in and do it. Same thing with the above the knee rack pull. It's all psychological. And it's because it's been imprinted in people's minds that that's a lot of weight, which is great for showing off and tricking people. But if you actually train the lifts regularly and actually put focus into it, you'd realize very quickly these lifts aren't that impressive. They're just lifts that people like to use to mask their actual strength and look impressive, but they aren't actually necessarily that strong, right? They really aren't. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.